I am so excited to have Lindsay Schwartz on my podcast today. I reached out to you, I think like years ago. We'll talk about how we actually first met.
Yeah.
And then I realized that you live in Scottsdale area. And then we connected at the podcast and we went for a couple walks and the rest is history.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah. So I'm so grateful for you to be here and share your knowledge. I told you already that I'm going to start with a controversial question.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay. Do you think that women can be as successful as men in entrepreneurship?
I think, 100% yes. And I think we would be lying if we said that there aren't unique challenges that women face. I mean, even the mental load, balancing home life, there's just so many things on women's plates. But can women be just as successful? Yes. And I also think that I'm not of the belief that we are going to create the same kind of success that men create in business. I'm not on some trajectory trying to prove my worth in, being this powerful woman in a man's world. I want to be a powerful woman in my world. And that does actually, I think, look very different than how men are wired to create success. So it's been interesting, navigating, building a brand that's called Powerhouse Women, and also have this cool opportunity to share that doesn't mean that it's anti-men or it means that I think women are superior to men. I love to look at the strengths that I have as a woman and really leverage those, not trying to be anyone else.
Yeah. So what does that look like for you? I know it's different maybe for everyone, but maybe for a powerhouse woman like you or someone who's in your community, for example.
Yeah.
How is that different?
Well, I can speak, I guess, for myself, and even just in understanding, I'm just kind of newly understanding some of these terms that are used a lot about energies, right? Masculine energy, feminine energy. And, there's a part of me that is very much wired to hustle, to achieve.
Yeah.
I am a Capricorn. I'm an oldest daughter. I think I have wired into me to want to do something great and build something great. And, I've had seasons of business where I'm building more from that place of maybe now, if I even just speak to the health aspects of it, feeling a lot more drained when I'm too much in that energy of trying to force things versus, put in my hard work, but then trust that. I think some of the feminine energy side of things, which I'm by no means an expert in this, I'm just really understanding it myself, is my intuition, my deep ability to trust. I think part of the magic of Powerhouse Women and what people experience even at our events actually comes from my deep ability to trust myself, to trust that I'm being guided, that I'm always kind of, if I'm clear about what I'm looking for, the connections I want to make, they come. If I will wait long enough and understand that, yes, there's a time for action, but there's even more surrender and even more trust in really tapping into my full superpower. And that part's been harder for me. I would much rather, I think it's more my natural design to take control, just want to take action right away. And there's a place for that, but most of the biggest miracles, really cool breakthroughs that have happened have come more from understanding the balance of trust, where I'm not trying to force the outcome.
Okay, so that's amazing. But for someone who's a new entrepreneur, and that I've shared my story, that I was really just a doctor, the 20 years of training, just a doctor, just
so lazy.
A couple of, I know, I wasn't doing enough. And a couple of years ago, I shifted into, very recently, really, a year-ish, into more of the entrepreneurial role of that, which came to me by accident. I really was just trying to share my information. And then somebody's like, you need a website. You need need a place for people to go. What if someone is so new at this and doesn't really know how to kind of listen? So you're saying listen to your intuition and then maybe wait for things to come to you. What are the first steps? What if you're new at this?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I don't want it to come across either, because this used to really trigger me. I think this is why I never subscribed to the, trust your intuition.
Yeah.
Because I was like, no, that's so unproductive. Like
Yeah.
I could be getting shit done here.
Yes.
So especially as a new entrepreneur, even what you're saying, you just felt there was something that prompted you to start sharing the knowledge online. You weren't doing it to try and start a business.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you saw, oh, there's something here.
Yeah.
I can take some action on this. I can hire people to help me get this out there. That is you leaning into your intuition. Now, it's not absent of action. So here's maybe the better way to describe it. So my very first business was this little health and fitness business. I did like some coaching. I had some nutritional supplements. And the way I built that business was very much from this logical mind of like trying to learn all the strategy that I could and implement it. And I had the experience of myself of constantly being frustrated because I felt like it wasn't happening fast enough. It wasn't going the way I wanted it to. It was like I was trying to force it. That's just my experience of how it felt for me. But I don't think I realized that's how it felt until I had the contrast of when I stepped into building Powerhouse Women, very much like what you're saying. I didn't try to start a business. I was in this season and I was really seeking personal growth, which led me to writing a self-published book. I really did it just for me, just to create a breakthrough for myself. I wasn't really challenging myself because I wasn't, I think when I'm in a controlling place, I'm keeping it within the confines of what I can already see. So I'm not tapping into, if we want to get more the spiritual side of it, I'm not tapping into where miracles occur, which is in the unknown. I wanted to keep everything within the known. So whether you're a new entrepreneur or not, I think if you're someone who's seeking growth, to realize that all growth happens in the unknown. So as I started to follow these little intuitive pings, writing this book, and then, the publisher said, well, you should do a book launch event. And I thought, well, an event where all the attention is focused on me sounds awful. That sounds like my worst nightmare. But what if we brought the conversations in the book to life through some different speakers and panel discussions and just really had an event focused on this idea that you don't have, like, we're all struggling. We're all figuring this out as we go. Let's normalize the fact that it's not the highlight reel we see on social media. Entrepreneurship really is a personal growth plan disguised as a financial opportunity.
Yeah.
So I stepped into that. And then I had the very first, now what's become the Powerhouse Women event. And none of that was within my conscious awareness. I didn't have that in a business plan. And there's a time and a place for business plans, but I've started to settle into the knowing, the fact that any business plan I create today, as we're sitting here right now, is going to be created from my conscious mind and the things that I can see and the things that I know right now. And my future and what I'm here to do is to grow. So there's a future version of me that knows things that the current version doesn't. So I think for me, I'm a very strategic, I'm a very logical person, I'm very left-brained, and my true superpower is when both of those things come together, or the logical side of me comes together with the knowing that there's a future version of me I haven't stepped into yet who will know different things. So I just hold my plans with a very loose grip. I still make plans. I still believe in working with mentors, but I have to notice where I'm trying to outsource my own sense of certainty to a mentor versus saying, okay, the mentor is saying I should do X, Y, and Z. I'm getting like this strong gut feeling. For me, my intuition speaks to me in like gut feelings and just in a knowing. I'm getting a strong gut feeling that, okay, that did work for them. I don't think that's my path. So my brand has thrived in the seasons when I've prioritized listening to my own gut intuition over someone else's certainty. And they're always well-meaning. It's not like these mentors are trying to lead me astray. But just because something worked for them doesn't mean that it's going to work for me. And it's almost like this razor sharp edge of saying, so whether you're a brand new entrepreneur, like you were saying, or if you're a seasoned entrepreneur, it's realizing that I think for all of us, it's this razor sharp edge of, yes, we need to be giving our full effort, and also listening for those intuitive pings, however they speak to you, and developing and cultivating trust that there's a bigger picture we can't see, but we always have access to that guidance that's pointing us in the right direction.
Yeah. I think one of the things that you said about, being always in the know, I forget how you phrase it, but like doing things, just executing on things and always staying in the know. I was telling someone that I really didn't understand this leaning into the unknown and the intuition all throughout my younger years. And I remember I was in nutrition school in college. And I thought to myself, like, I really want to do more about this. So I went to the career center and I was like very practical. I'm like, what are the paths like to graduate with a nutrition degree? And like, what can I be doing?
Mm-hmm.
And the paths were like, at that time, nutritionist, which was like, it was basically minimum wage. Or it was, work for a hospital. Again,
Yeah.
it was like minimum wage. Like it was like you'd make very, very little money every year. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, like I'm going to go through 4 years of college and end up doing something that it was very like a practical, like I can't do this because at that time there was really no internet opportunities. There was
Right.
really no other things going on. It was really a job after college. And so I remember thinking, okay, well, I better go to med school or law school or some kind of graduate training so that I can have a better job in nutrition and health. And that's why I actually went to med school. It was all in the like, I want to stay in the known and I don't want to walk in the unknown. And
Yeah.
but the world was different then. So and also, I come from an immigrant family and there's a lot of responsibility. Like they're not coming to America, like traveling thousands of
Right.
miles and with zero money to like have me work at, at that time, what I thought was like not a good enough job to,
Right.
for them.
It's a lot of pressure.
I mean, they paid for my college, like it was a lot of pressure. And so I think throughout my career, I was always trying to stay in the known, trying to do the things that I knew could get me some sort of success, even though maybe it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, but I felt like, well, at least I know that I'll be safe.
Yeah.
And I think this concept that you're talking about is like really being okay with not knowing and not being so safe anymore. And I wish I knew that back then because what's the worst that can
Same.
happen, right?
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
worst that can happen is that you fail and you pivot. And I think I was so afraid of failing. And again, it was kind of like that responsibility that I felt that I never let myself. And then now that I'm in this world, I really do see the benefit of just kind of not taking huge risks or anything, but really kind of saying, well, I don't know what the future holds, but I'm just going to do what feels right. Is that kind of what you're saying? Or is there other tips that you give to people when they're kind of moving into that new realm?
Gosh, that's such a great question. Let me think about in
Actionable tips.
day to day what it feels like. Because again, I think it's either the way I would always perceive this kind of advice is either far too woo-woo that I couldn't really connect with it. And it just sounded like, sitting on a mountaintop with monks and just waiting for your life purpose to find you.
People in medicine would always say to us, like, be careful of these alternative medicine ideas of like healing yourself through your mind. And they would like literally give you the worst case scenarios, like these people with like stage 4 cancer that refused treatment and they only wanted to use their mindset. And so we were always swayed to not think of that stuff as like totally crazy, far-fetched. And so it wasn't until a few years ago that I actually realized that it doesn't have to be like that. It's not like you're giving up all your treatment options and then you're just surrendering yourself to like mindset. It's that you're recruiting your mind.
Yeah.
And if you actually look at the data, at least in health, like if you recruit your mind into it, I mean, there's healing. The numbers are insane. Like it's like, 33 to 45% reduction in like heart disease and death from just like being positive and willing yourself to do something. So I think my whole perspective has shifted. And the way I think about it for myself recently, and I know we've talked about this, is like really just using our mind to be sure. Like I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm sure that I'm moving in the right direction. And as long as that feels aligned, then that's the right move.
Or even for me, I'll say, I'm not sure I'm moving in the right direction,
so
or like what even is the right direction, other than if I can go back to realizing that the reason I think I was called to be in this business world is because I'm such a seeker. I'm always seeking growth and evolution, and there's no better way. Building a business will push you up against the edges of where you stop yourself in life. It just will. And I think, especially as an achiever, as someone who's driven by, I want to see my results, it's such a cool playground to get to discover things about yourself. Now, if I keep myself understanding that that's what my business is reflecting to me, it's reflecting to me where I get in my own way, where I stop, where my fears are, then I'm always on the right path if I'm taking risks and stretching myself to bump up against those things. It's not, if a launch doesn't go well, or if I did a podcast for my audience this year saying how I was on Instagram recently, and a friend of mine had a really successful launch, and she was sharing about like her numbers from her launch. And I just had this moment of just like overwhelmed with like pride for her, because I know she went through a really challenging season. And again, like in my intuition and just something kind of in my mind, popped in just this thought of, wow, how powerful would it be to share with the Powerhouse Women audience where I'm really at this year? Because once I sat down and I looked at the numbers, we were actually $100,000 off, like down, not the trajectory you want.
Yeah.
And
that's very stressful.
But here's the weird thing. It wasn't. Now, not to say like, this was a very real, it's not like I'm just sitting on mountains of cash. There's some personal things going on in my life right now that have deeply affected me financially. That was part of why 2 of the launches that I did, my energy wasn't able to fully show up for them. And my 2 biggest launches of the year were about half of what they normally would be. And because I've cultivated this trust in the unknown, and I know I am in a season that is deeply forcing me to shed. It's actually giving me the opportunity. It's not forcing me to. It's forcing me to a point where I get to choose to shed a lot of the way that I've been programmed, a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of doubts in myself. It's just really revealing a lot of things that it's time for them to go. And so if I'm fully trusting that process and I'm being pushed to this financial threshold where it felt really uncomfortable, it also brought me to this point of, well, where does my sense of security actually come from? Is my security in money, or is my security and my sense of safety something I can cultivate within myself? And from that point, I actually come up with better business ideas anyway.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a tangent, but to say, this year has been a very different year for me. But it's either I believe all of it is for me and for my growth, or none of it is. I don't think we get like a 50-50. Like sometimes it's for my growth when it feels good, and then other times like, F this is the worst. So sitting in that, I think just that awareness going, okay, now there are some things I will do differently to set myself up in the future financially where I'm not as, I'm a pretty big risk taker. Like I actually I'll risk on investments. I had a lot of my money in real estate. So it did really impact me. But I noticed how my nervous system felt calm and grounded, knowing that this is actually an opportunity to now look at my relationship with money, my relationship with where my safety actually comes from. I don't remember my initial reason or point behind mentioning this, other than to say it's like, I think those are the things as entrepreneurs we could be embarrassed to share. Like everyone wants to share their wins. I am learning so much about myself in a season where like someone could look at the actual reality of my life and see losses, not wins.
Yeah.
But I am growing into the version of myself that the next winning season that people see is being built right now.
And for you to say that, it's like, it's so powerful, because I think that so many of us think of losses as like true losses. Like, oh my God, I've lost this. But you're saying that it's not a zero-sum game. Like it's an ongoing. It's like running a marathon. It's not like running a sprint. Like you are not going to run the same speed in mile 12 that you will at the very end of the race or at the very beginning of the race. And I think we have to understand that This is not like, oh, this is it. That's the
Yeah.
final.
Yeah.
I think I had to understand that too, that everything is constantly changing and moving, and there's going to be challenges and things that come to you to teach you a lesson, and you can grow from it, or you can wallow in it. Like
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
choices. Now, I remember one of our first walks, we talked about this book that you thought was like really life-changing. And I read it as soon as we ended our walk. I literally downloaded it, and it was like life-changing. And I would love for you to share with the listeners like what that book is and why it changed your life, and then I'll talk about mine.
Yeah. So the book is called 10X is Easier Than 2X.
By Dan Sullivan and
Ben Hardy.
Ben Hardy, yes.
Co-authored it. So especially for someone who's an entrepreneur, but I actually think anyone who's on a growth trajectory, the premise was pretty simple. I really started my year diving into this book, looking at how it had definitely impacted my business. And the premise is really what the title suggests, that it's actually easier to go all in on something that's going to 10x your results in any area. And that just really means a way of thinking. It's a exponential growth. It's kind of like the quantum leap type growth that we talk about versus 2x growth, which is linear. It's very much like from point A to point B to point C. And what he shares, one of the most, I think, eye-opening things from that initial premise that really connected with me was this idea that, especially I mentor a lot of different entrepreneurs, and we're all looking for clarity, right? Clarity about what's the next step. Should I hire or fire this person? Just what's the right next thing? And how when you're looking at your business or your next growth, it could even be your health and fitness through a 10x lens, it actually helps you get laser focused on the couple of things that will actually move the needle versus if you're just looking for a linear path to growth. Like if you and I sat down and we keep saying we're going to do this, like do a little mastermind and look at our goals for next year. If I'm saying, okay, I want to grow my event by 10% next year, and that's pretty linear growth, there are infinite ways I could get there. But if I say, I'm just using this as an example, right? If I say I want to, fill a stadium next year, there's probably only like one or two ways that I could actually get there. It would now that's not my goal for next year, so I'm not doing that. But it would immediately take away 90% of the confusion because it would point me directly to the things that I would need to shift, the people I would need to hire. It probably would mean that the way I'm showing up and everyone on my team would not look at all like it does today, which can feel, again, if we haven't cultivated that relationship with uncertainty, that can actually feel really triggering. So take this content at your own pace, at the pace your nervous system can keep up with. But it's just an interesting frame of reference to, I think, again, point us to the places where we get in our own way. Because if you even have trouble stretching your mind to think about, like, well, what would a 10x leap for myself look like? And if you notice the excuses that show up, right there, it's pointing you to what's currently in your way of the kind of growth you want to experience. So again, I'm one of those weirdos who loves like to be pointed directly in the, like, to my greatest fear and pain and the thing that's standing in my way, because then it's like when you shine a light in a dark room, it takes a lot of the fear out of, what darkness or looking at fear can bring, because once you shine the light on it, you can see it for what it is. Now you have a choice to do something about it.
I think that's so powerful. I mean, one of the things that shifted in my life, just reading that, a couple of things, but one of the things is, like, he gives the example of his daughter, I think, playing tennis.
Oh, I think it was his son, but this example was so good.
And he asked his son, how do you become a better tennis player? And the son was like, oh, I can like practice a little bit more, do a couple more tournaments and increase the amount of lessons I have. And he said, but what if you wanted to go pro? Like, what would it take to go pro? And he was like, oh, well, that would be completely different. I'd have to get a nutritionist, and I'd have to get a trainer, and I'd have to sign up for the UST, like the national tournaments, and I'd have to and get a new coach. And so then the dad was like, well, then do that, because even if you don't end up being a professional or winning some professional tournament, you'll still be 10 times better than you would have been. And it really changed the way I thought, because I thought to myself, okay, I want to one day write, speak more, be on stages, write more, have a new thought process around health and wellness and mindset, and especially for women.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read that book, I thought to myself, oh my God, he's totally right. Instead of just waiting every day, just being like, oh, I'm going to get a little bit bigger or a little bit better when I practice, to really say, like, what does it take to be a world-class speaker? What does it take to have a world-class program for people to sign up? Like, what is it going to take to get to that 10x level? Not just like waiting for yourself to get a little bit better at all that. And so that, obviously that. And then the other thing it did is really made me focus on the few areas of my business that actually are growing the most.
Yes. And get focused.
Yeah.
Right?
And not worry about all of the, like the shiny, what is it? The shiny object syndrome, where everyone comes to you and they're like, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this. And just laser focusing on the things that actually are making the biggest progress in your business. That's like huge.
I love that you shared that example, because here are the practical ways that I put this into action within my business. So, or even when I mentor entrepreneurs, this is like the approach that I'll have people take. So if you think about, like, right now, as we're recording this, I'm starting to do my planning for 2025. And what I'll do is I sit with my CFO and we plan like the very measurable, safe growth trajectory. That's great. It's not like I'm just living in la la land and saying like, I'm going to 10x and then I'm basing my budget based on that. No, my business budget is based on a very conservative estimate of like, what if we just did, like, our sales stayed flat? Great, let's build the budget on that. Now, let me step into a place that actually gives me access to more creative ideas, clarity I couldn't see, etc. So I build the budget, first of all, based on the more of the 2x, the safety, like I make sure that the business is grounded in real numbers. Then I love to play this game with myself, especially as the visionary, the CEO, the one like leading the vision, is I'll say, okay, so let's just pick an area of the business, since I was talking about the event. I really see that I want the event more. My goal more this year is to step into monetizing the podcast and the event in terms of like brand sponsorships and partnerships. So like, I could take a goal like that, and let's say I have a goal of, a certain monetary goal or something I want to achieve. Maybe for you, it's you want to be on X number of stages or get a certain opportunity. And I'll look at a goal that I think is going to take me, 12 months to achieve. And I'll say, okay, well, who would I have to become? What would I need to let go of? And what would I need to do? Like, what would need to happen in the business in order for that goal to happen in 3 months?
Yeah.
So I'll take it from 1 year to 1 quarter, or if that's, and then I pay attention to my nervous system. If my nervous system has a full-on freak out, or if I dissociate because I'm like, oh, that's not possible.
Yeah.
Then I'll go, well, what would it look like? Who would I have to become? What would I have to shift in order to do that in 6 months? And I look for the place where my mind is like, you sound a little crazy. But it's actually just an inquiry. It's not saying I'm setting that bar for myself or I need to make that happen. But what it starts to do is it starts to trigger certain fears. My inner dialogue immediately starts to show me where my limitations are. And so you can there's a couple of ways to do it. Either I will shorten the time frame. That creates like enough pressure where it brings my negativity to the surface. Or I'll double or triple the goal. So another exercise I'll have women do in one of my programs is I'll have them take the most money they've ever made in their business in a year. And let's say that's $50,000. And I'll have them add at least 1 0 to the point, and some of them need to add like 2, and most of them just need to add 1. And then I have them sit and think about like, well, what would you need to do? What would it look like? How would it feel for you to bring in that amount of money? And usually, so if my number is 50,000, now I add a 0, now it's 500,000. The first response is like, oh, how cool. Like, that would be amazing. That would feel so good. But if you press people further, it'll start to reveal where they don't see their way there. They don't believe they have what it takes. They don't believe they provide enough value. They don't trust themselves with money. It starts to bring up triggering fears around the thought of selling to people. So what I'm looking for, and what I think the 10x versus 2x concept, or you can, shorten the time frame or 10x the goal just to see how it feels in your body and your nervous system, what it does is it's just going to bring to the surface whatever's blocking you so that you can start to reprogram that.
Yeah. And a lot of that for me is like, I think for a long time, I believed that as a physician that I should just do it for free, that I should not ask for that. I shouldn't do brand sponsorships, that I shouldn't have products, that I shouldn't charge what I'm worth. Because if I did, and I don't know if that came from my training or if that came from what I understood as it was just kind of like, I had to coach myself into saying that it is possible to bring people so much value that they should provide you payment for those services. Like that was like a breakthrough for me because I thought to myself like, well, I should just, it's like you should just be volunteering your time and your expertise. And it took me a long time to break through. And once I did, that's when things started to make sense for me because I said, I want to provide so much value to people that and in such a low cost way that my value is like 10 times what I'm charging for that service. And then that made it feel good to me. And then I thought, okay, it's not like I'm like swindling people out of money or like that people, that I should, I'm one of those doctors who just like sell out is what we call it. I had to say, well, I'm providing at least 10 times more value, sometimes 100 times more value than what I charge. And that's when I think it became clear to me that I could grow this thing. Because before that, I had a limited belief system that
it's so common too.
Yeah,
So
that
common.
I would be embarrassed or I would feel like, oh my God, even if I loved a product, I wouldn't even think to like contact them or be a part of their team because I thought to myself, well, I can't do that. Well, then, and I still am very careful. So I know that if I'm giving advice, like if I'm telling you to take magnesium or vitamin D, if I had like a bottle of vitamin D or magnesium and I'm like, it's not going to come out as credible. And I know that. So I need to be careful about how I build a business around it. I want to build a business on trust and authority and not make people feel like, well, it's because she has this product she's trying to sell. And so I think it is, I have to be very, very mindful about how I do it. But really trying to build a business is not easy. And I think using these tools of like, that's why for me, speaking and being educational, doing a podcast, doing YouTube just feels so much more authentic because I feel like I'm providing a lot of value to people. And that to me feels like the best way to grow. We also share a really amazing philosophy about business and growth that we've both kind of come into more recently. Like me, probably over the last year, I've been using principles of something called Kabbalah in my business and life. And I know we've talked about it a lot. And so I wanted to share with the viewers and listeners a little bit about how we're incorporating Kabbalah into our lives and to help our business and our personal growth. Because I think what I've realized is that as I move into this new season of life, that I have a lot of unknowns and I need a framework in my mind to be able to deal with that because that's all new to me. And I would love to hear how you kind of incorporate it into your life during this season or in general and how it can help people too.
Yeah. I am newer to the rabbit hole. And
but you're way down that rabbit hole.
I was going to say, I am someone who just like fully commits. And I really let my intuition guide me on that too. So there were seasons in the past where I went pretty deep into the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza and understanding quantum physics. And I really pay attention deeply to what grabs my attention. And you and I have talked a little bit about human design, another rabbit hole I love. But my human design is that of like, I really am meant to give my energy to what lights me up. And personal growth, spirituality has always been the number one thing. Again, even I look at my business through the lens of how it's helping me on my spiritual personal growth path. So I had been seeing, some of David Guillaume's content and then realizing all the connections to your world. And it really came into the picture for me. And this year has been a time of deep, deep personal transformation. and a time where I was struggling with, my very human experience of loss, of being in some of the deepest pain I've ever been in, like really grappling with so much change in such a short period of time that it was very disorienting. It was definitely had an impact on my nervous system. And I also knew and really felt on a deep level that it was also this portal of transformation if I chose to see it that way. So it was this interesting dance of supporting my very real, like the way my body was responding. When you go through trauma and pain and loss and grief, there's a very like visceral response to it. And then it was almost like my higher self was also holding my hand. I'm like, now this is just getting weird. But like now I have two selves. But it was like my higher self was connected to the truth that there was this portal, this gateway to the next really big transformation that I could feel I was calling in. And, I found it through David Guillaume, who you also know, who's been on your show. I've listened to those episodes so many times. And it was another episode he did with someone else that was really talking about just the intelligence of pain, and how for those of us who are consciously like calling in growth, sometimes like you really have to break in order to, there has to be enough pressure that it causes a break, like a literal break in your current identity, so that you can rebuild. And there's this period of darkness you go through where you very much feel like there's no direction. I'm not seeing anything. I'm not seeing with clarity. And back to what we were talking about earlier, how I'm really just sharing even my interpretation of it, that I understand on a logical level that if I could see my way through this, even now I'm still in it, if I could see my way through it, exactly where it's going to lead me, then I would miss the spiritual development that's actually going on, the deepening of trust, the deepening of my intuition. I mean, the way I can more clearly hear and feel my intuition now is wild compared to before this season. And I think the piece that's so fundamental, it's in his Kabbalah 1, it's like the first few modules of just understanding, the way I react to the opportunities to grow. He calls it like your soul's correction, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of what I've already been using, I just didn't have, this is just another terminology, a way of describing it, is what I was saying before, leaning into discomfort to bring up, like I want to bring to the surface whatever's in my way, but then pairing it with the understanding that these concepts gave of that pause, like the power of the pause, and just noticing how would I normally react? And that's usually coming from fear or trying to control or trying to create safety. And then instead being like, can I just pause and hang here and just observe what I really want to do? Like it's almost that primal instinct, which is based in safety, versus what's the almost more elevated response in this situation. So there was so much. I definitely went down the rabbit hole. I think I texted you. I was like, yep, I'm done with Kabbalah 1, 2, and 3, the prosperity course. I'm on Kabbalah 1 again. I'm reviewing it. But that's very much how I tend to consume, especially something that's really, it was very much hitting a vein of something I'm walking through in my life right now. And it gave me the tools to, I think, help and support the part of me that was having the very human experience of loss and grief, and not stay there, like hold space for processing those emotions, but really connect with the part of me that equally knew, no, this is changing my whole entire life in such a powerful way. And how long I choose to suffer in the process, that's the part that's optional.
When you were experiencing these losses or changes, did you use the pause, what a pleasure? So in Kabbalah, David Guillaume and Kabbalah in general will say, like, when there's some struggle in your life, not only do you pause, but you also say, like, what a pleasure. Like, I get to see the parts of me, the parts of my life that is teaching me a lesson right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what you're saying is like, just like leaning into what it's trying to teach you and what does this mean, and how can I be a better person because of it?
Yeah, that, and I think the what a pleasure piece of it helped me to see where in the past, especially when things like judgment, negativity, jealousy, things that are very much traits in all of us, but especially I can speak personally, when I would see elements of my jealousy or my, those things show up, I didn't want to look at it. But instead it really helped to give context that, it is a pleasure when that stuff comes to the surface, because I think the part of me that was rejecting it was really just asking for me to fully embrace that that's a part of most of us as human beings on this physical plane that we're on have all of it, right? We have the anger, we have the jealousy, we have all the things that it's easy to judge in someone else because we know that that's within us too. So I think it helped me to stop holding this expectation that I had to be, this person void of those, like the darkness that's on the other side of some of my favorite parts of my personality and what makes me who I am, is that the other stuff has to be triggered so I can, it's not even like I'm trying to outrun it or be completely void of any of those feelings. But I think when I'm in those feelings, when I feel jealousy show up, why it feels so uncomfortable, or because I know that's not actually my true state of being. That's not my true nature.
So when do you feel jealousy, if you're willing to share? Because I can share some.
Yeah. Since we've been talking a lot about business, I've definitely in the past noticed jealousy come up when I've had this experience of myself that I'm even unpacking right now, where my journey has looked, very different than other people's. When I've observed that I feel like I've been doing all the same actions as someone else and they just seem to be getting the opportunities, it is a little bit, I think jealousy and envy have a little bit of a different energetic signature. I think it triggers in me the envy which is really showing me like I do really want that. I've heard I'm going to butcher it if I try to say now, like the difference between jealousy and envy. I feel like jealousy is like, I want that and I don't want them to have it. Envy is like, ooh, I really want that. What's wrong with me? I almost go into more of like imposter syndrome. Yeah. I could be butchering that, but that's like my experience of myself.
That's what I would
So it shows to me, number one, ooh, I desire that. And a lot of times, here's a lot of what I'm working through, like my current lesson is I've had a lot of shame around desiring the next level of success. Because I grew up in a really small town. Okay. I've already surpassed like the highest level of success I've ever seen someone in my life create. And it does create a feeling of separateness. And there's a part of me that very much doesn't want to experience a lack of connection with people I love. And that comes with my soul's evolution, because I also can't ignore, it's very uncomfortable to ignore that there's more I want to do and create, and I want to serve in a bigger way. And I've already kind of, outgrown the identity that fit with the place I grew up and the mindset of, the people I grew up around. So I'm already there, but it's like I resist, and then I feel shame around the fact that I want it. And so I'm working through a lot of those feelings even now.
I think the way it helped me to think about it, and I don't know if you use this thought process, but I had this block in the sense that I always wanted to be humble. I want to be the same as everybody else. You want to be able to relate. You don't want it to be like, oh, look at me. Like I very much resisted that path. So the way I think about it is that I'm helping other people see their gifts and go live out their gifts. And it's not about me. It's about helping those people find their gifts and go live them out. And so when I take that attention off of me and put it on what I'm able to provide for others, then I'm able to grow, because I'm not worried about like how I'm going to look or what it means for me or how other people will perceive me. And so it keeps me grounded, and it keeps me in that right energetic space to like create more and bigger because I know that there's so many more people and so many more gifts and so many more things I could be saying that could help people reach their gifts. Because I know that, I think we both know that you can't go live out your gifts when you're treating yourself poorly. And when you're not sleeping, you're stressed, you're around toxic people, you're eating toxic things, you're drinking or, using substances that are not good, nice to your body. When you're not taking care of yourself, you can't go live out your gifts. And so what I'm trying to do is like, hey, you have a lot of things inside of you that you still have to accomplish and gifts that you still have to live out. Like, do these things for your mind and for your body, for your gut to actually do that. And that to me felt the only way I could grow. Because again, like you said, I wanted to be able to relate to people. I wanted to be able to say like, and grow in a way that felt right for me. And that shift just helped me so much. And that meant though, changing the focus of my work. So the focus of my work was no longer, look at me, here I am, this is and more on like, here's what I can give to you to help you.
Yeah, that's so good.
And that helps us, at least for me, it's helped me get through that. The other thing about Kabbalah that has helped me a lot, and I think we've talked about this too, and you do this so well, I think. When you want something, I think before I was always under the impression, people always told me like, just go for it, be a hustler, like push it through.
Yeah.
And what I realized is that you have to disconnect yourself from the outcome, that no matter how much you want it, you have to imagine yourself not getting it and being just as happy because you're just complete without it. And that shift was like so mind-boggling. Like you want something so bad, but you're letting yourself be disconnected to it. Like it's like the dance of like going for it. But then, and I think you do that well because I don't sense that you push on things too much. Like I think even in relationships, in your business, like I find that the more I want something and the more I feel myself attached to it, the harder it gets to grasp. And then the more you let go and almost like retreat and be okay mentally, the better it gets.
Yeah. And I think that's like the biggest place that I see the contrast between the energy that I embodied as I was building that first business and then what I feel now. And I can feel when I dip into the more attached energy. And I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for those times where I can experience the contrast because then I see the miracles that come when I do, take the action. I take every action I can see to take and then release the outcome. And that's such it's almost like a hard concept to describe if you haven't experienced it viscerally because I can feel the difference from when I'm coming from an attached place and when I'm not.
Oh, 100%. And it's like, I'll give you the perfect example. This just happened, okay? So about 2 weeks ago, I was talking to Mel Robbins, which everybody knows is like she does all the things that I would one day want to do in a different realm. She speaks, she's on stages, has programs, she influences so many people, and she's been such a great mentor to me. And so I was asking her something about speaking. And she said, oh my God, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be in Phoenix. And she said, we should meet I don't know if I have time. Like, I don't know the details of the conference. Like, I don't even know when I'm going in and out, but like, we should. And so I was like, oh my God, this is a great opportunity for me to talk to my mentors, to see her in action, maybe to see her doing something that I one day maybe want to do, right?
Yeah.
And I came from the energy of like, yes, I want it. So I said, yes, please tell me details. Like, I want to come, blah, blah, blah. She doesn't reply for a few days. She doesn't reply for a week. And I think to myself, like, I thought maybe this week is the week it's coming up. And I thought to myself, like, I should reach out to her again. And then I thought to myself, no, I'm fine. Like, she's been so great to me. I've had so much growth from speaking to her. She's gotten me so many connections and continues to do so. I don't want to be that person who's like, she's got a million launches happening. I could see her life was really busy at this moment.
Yeah.
And so I thought to myself, you know what? I'm not going to reach out to her. When it gets closer, I'll reach out to someone on her team and just say, hey, are you available? If not, no worries. And so I had to stop myself in that moment and
Mhm.
break the attachment of how it was going to help me and how I could learn from it and what it would
Mhm.
mean to me, and just say, I don't really care.
Mhm.
I'm going to be fine either way. And
Yep.
she's going to be helpful either way. And
Yep.
and just kind of mentally break that attachment. And so then today, now she's coming tomorrow. From when people are watching this has already happened. But her team member reached out to me and she's like, hey, she's been so busy. She's coming in tomorrow. Do you want to come and I said, yeah, great. And see, like, and
Yeah.
now I'm not even like overly excited. I'm
And
like,
you'll show up in a different energy.
yeah, like my energy is
versus-
like, hey, I'm here,
Yeah.
whatever, like I'm learning and this is something that I want to do for my 10x future. And like, I'm just
Cool.
learning myself. Like
Yeah.
I'm not hooked on the outcome of what it should look like. I had to but coach myself though,
Yep.
because I
Yep.
so
Yep.
wanted to be like, well, let me find out everything. Let me do something about it. Let me
Yeah.
capitalize on the opportunity. And I had to like say, no, it is meant to be. If it's meant to be, I'll be there and I'll learn from it. If it's not, then I'll be fine.
Such a good example of what it looks and feels like in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's like that balance of noticing when that shows up like that. And I think the attachment feels like this, like almost this, I've got to do this, or this could, this
be
could
something great for me. Or
and it's almost like putting too much of our future and the results in the hands, something outside of ourselves.
yeah.
And whenever I notice that, exactly what you did, I just pull it back in and I'm like, nope, I am whole exactly as I am. If
Exactly.
it's not this, it's something better. And that's not just something I say, that's something I firmly believe to the core of my being. And that's easier to say when then something cool happens, like, okay, then her team does reach out.
Yeah.
But you would have been just as happy, just as secure, just as fine if she didn't reach out.
And I've had situations where, I had to disattach myself from the outcome and the outcome didn't happen.
Yeah.
And you're in a better mental space for it.
Mhm.
So I think that's really helpful. I wanted to ask you, I went to the Powerhouse. I spoke on a panel at the Powerhouse Women Conference this year, and it was so amazing to see you in action, to see your community. And I think, what is the point for you to create that community? I know it happened kind of by mistake when you
Mhm.
first did it, but what is your mission with that
Mhm.
community?
It was really created out of a desire to meet a need that I had. And I think a lot of us end up creating things to meet our own needs, figuring if we need it, someone else does too. And, as a female entrepreneur, I had done a lot of networking. I'd gone to every type of networking event under the sun. And I was craving a place that, number one, I felt like my ambition and the fullest version of me was really celebrated. Especially as women, I hear from so many friends and mentors, peers in the industry, that a lot of us are, from families or from environments or have friend groups that they just don't get it. It's not that they're not supportive.
Yeah.
They just, my grandma wouldn't know how to support me. She doesn't even have the internet at her house. Like, she doesn't understand building a business on the internet.
Yeah.
So it's not that there's a lack of support. There's just a lack of understanding. And so it felt very much like there weren't many places I could share about like my really, really big goals as I was just getting started. And then in those spaces where we were talking about goals and talking about business and all these things, I also then felt this pressure that I couldn't also share about my, $100,000 loss this year, or places where I'm like, gosh, I'm really struggling with this. I'm struggling mentally. I'm really bumping up against myself. And I was looking for a place where both were just felt equally safe. And that was the simple mission and the intention behind Powerhouse Women. And it started very small with 100 people in a room. And now we just had 800 women with us in August.
Incredible.
And it's, this global community and, this podcast. And it's just something so much bigger than I ever intended. But it really just still comes back to that mission of creating a space where our biggest, most ambitious, most self-expressed version of us is celebrated, and you feel safe and seen as that version of you. And also, we're going to talk about how difficult it is sometimes to be someone who's on a growth journey, whether it's growing in your business, in your career, in your life. Because I think when we can bring those two together, and especially in an event setting, something we do is we have, some of the biggest names in personal development, you, Jamie Kern-Lima, Lori Harder, our other friend. And then we have women who were attendees last year, and now they're on the stage sharing, their breakthroughs and their lessons. Because what it does is it shows people that we are all the same.
Yeah,
That
we're
just
all
at different
struggling.
points of the same journey, and it can feel lonely when you're on a growth journey, and it doesn't have to.
Yeah, I love that. I've just been loving the Powerhouse community and you. And I think what I learned from you and Lori Harder, our mutual friend, is that vulnerability part.
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of these conferences I've ever been to that are business conferences or entrepreneur, it's all about, I made this much money,
Yeah.
with passive income, like real estate this and blah, blah, blah. And it's really a lot of like showboating is how I think of that.
That's
about
such a great word.
And not really sharing the struggles or like and you just feel like you're the only one that is struggling or that is having doubts or that's having losses or that's having, a very irregular growth journey. And so I think that's been so great talking to you and feeling comfortable sharing about that. That's so healing for all of us.
Yeah.
So I thank you for that. How do people learn more about your podcast and your community, and how do they know more about you?
Yeah. Everything's under Powerhouse Women. So we just keep it super easy. The event is the Powerhouse Women event. The podcast is Powerhouse Women. Instagram is Powerhouse_women. And I'm sure we'll link everything in the show notes too, so people can find it. But
when is the next event?
August 2025. It's the 15th, 16th, and 17th.
You already,
I'm planning further ahead this year because,
Yeah.
Especially at the size that we're at, locking in venues can be a challenge. So we do already have the dates secured. And yes, it's hot in Arizona, but people fly in from all over the world. And really it's something that I always say to people, it truly is something that has to be experienced.
Yeah.
Because even if you see the beautiful videos and the Instagram reels and you can feel the energy of it, it's a feeling.
Yeah.
It really is. It's a feeling of, especially if you're a fellow ambitious woman and you're really looking to connect in a deeper way with people who are on that same journey, you'll feel that in this room. And I'm very biased, but it's my favorite weekend of the year.
It is so transformational. Like I said, I think the thing that I took away from it is that it's okay to, I think the losses and the struggles are what make you stronger. And I think that most places you don't have that opportunity to share here. And the good and the bad, you hear a lot about the good and don't hear a lot about the bad. But I think the combination is what makes it special. So thank you so much for being on.
I'm so
I
grateful
could
for
talk to you forever. And maybe we'll do, I was thinking about doing maybe one where we do it in a group, maybe Lori and us. And
that'd be fun.
Yeah.
That'd be so much fun.
And do a conversation. But we'll save that. We'll do that when we're all in town one day. So thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Until our next walk.
Okay. Yeah, we gotta get that on the books.
Yeah, exactly.